What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is very nearly complete. Today, we are in Albuquerque, New Mexico to talk about the New Mexico Lobos out of the Mountain West. And after you had built momentum over the past couple of years, there are a lot of changes that are going to go on with this program. My name is Nate Bope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. I want to thank you all so much for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. You want to support the channel even further, then please do what it says below, hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, you might as well ring the bell. Turning on notifications will ensure that you don't miss a thing during the rest of prediction season. Again, just a few videos left, guys. You also won't miss what's going on during the college football season either. I am a sports media graduate delving into the professional world of the industry, and if all of you want to see the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date what goes on this very YouTube channel, then please give me a follow on Twitter, Instagram. It's at TailgateNate29, and you can feel free to even email me, tailgatenate29@gmail.com. But I do want to thank all of you so much for not only supporting, but interacting with me in the channel in whatever way that you may be doing so. With all that said and done and out of the way, your former Idaho Vandal head coach Jason Eck is taking over this program this season, because you did see a former Lobo head coach and Bronco Mendenhall has now taken the job over at Utah State. And look, this was a New Mexico team that was really starting to build towards some good things. I believe a 4-8, 5-7 year. It was definitely one of those two records. They were really building and starting to develop something. Well, you lose a lot of pieces through the portal, your head coach leaves, and bam, you are working with an entirely new unit under Jason Eck. So you can kind of see it as starting from scratch, but is this a team that's going to be able to carry over their momentum even with all the changes? Well, that's something that we're going to explore here in this video, but how do we explore it is the question. Well, we are going to go through a roster preview, offense here to the left, defense here to the right. At the end of it all, we will go through and preview the New Mexico Lobo football schedule, where I will give it a game-by-game preview and prediction, and this video overall is here to tell all of you what I think about the Lobos in 2025. Returning production numbers are right down below me. They are according to ESPN, and they factor in transfer portal additions up to a certain percentage. What's more is your recruiting and transfer portal ranks for the class of 2025 are both according to 24/7 Sports. Let's dive on into talking about your offense and the offensive coordinator whose last name I will butcher, and Luke Schleusner. That is as phonetic as I can get it. Luke Schleusner is going to be your offensive coordinator this season. You lose quite the stud out of the quarterback room. He is transferred over to Utah to be the head coach, or not the head coach, be the quarterback for Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham. Devin Dampier is going to be leaving. 2,768 yards. Now, his passing ability was not his highlight. 12 touchdowns and did throw 12 interceptions, but you look at what he did on the ground. 1,166 yards and 19 rushing touchdowns. Ripped off big runs after, or I should say ripped off big run after big run. 7.5 yards per carry. And he only got sacked 5 times, a lot of that being he was really good at escaping pressure and getting outside of the pocket, just not a team that allowed many sacks because of Dampier's ability to be able to work in the pocket and be able to extend plays. Now, I know his passing ability needs some improvement, especially in some of the decision-making factors, but overall, I mean, you can't argue with 1,000, not even that, 1,100 rushing yards out of your quarterback, and still provided some good, really good contribution through the air. I think he's really going to be missed in this offense. I think it was a guy that Jason Eck would have liked to have, but he's going to get his guy coming over from Idaho. Jack Lane is the presumptive starting quarterback entering 2025. 1,477 yards, 14 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions with the Vandals last year through only 154 passing attempts. And when you go ahead and you take a look at his game log, sort of, again, that game against Oregon, he did not play up until October 26th, where he did take the reins the rest of the way. So only played in 6 games last year. And under Jason Eck, Idaho was a team that made the quarterfinals in the FCS playoffs. They've made that in back-to-back seasons. So bringing Jack Lane over, probably a guy that's not overall as talented as Giovanni McCoy, who transferred out of Idaho a couple seasons ago, but I still really like Jack Lane. I think he's a nice, solid player, and will provide some good moments at the quarterback position here. And of course, he knows the system, so he knows what he's working with. However, all the talent around this team, and again, this may not come as that big of a shock, so I'll gloss over it pretty quickly because it really says it all right here. Every major skill position piece, that's running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, are gone. Gone. They all hit the transfer portal. Pretty much all of them, I believe, if not the entire skill position room is going to be entering the transfer portal. This is a team that is just absolutely gutted. Now, Devin Dampier did lead the team in rushing last year. You still lose a great running back when Eli Sanders is going to be leaving this room. He is off to USC, and your entire depth is going to be new. So, okay, your backfield stable, all transfer portal pieces this year. You're going to have Scottree Humphrey enter in over from, yes, Montana State. Okay, that's a pretty solid transfer from a good program. From Weber State is Damon Bankston. Okay, again, another solid running back transfer. And then there are some others. Deshaun Buchanan is entering from Idaho. So there is the Idaho running back that does transfer into this room. And then you also do get DJ McKinney, who is coming over from Sam Houston State. He had 481 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. According to ourlads.com, Humphrey and Bankston are those top 2 on the depth chart, which is exactly why you see them listed here. But guys, I'm sitting up here and telling you right now, I could see DJ McKinney playing a pretty big role for the team this year. I could see Deshaun Buchanan playing a pretty big role for the team this year. This running back room for me is very up in the air. I think there are a lot of pieces that can come in and get the job done, and we'll just have to wait and see which guys are going to end up taking those lead roles and providing the most carries out of this running back room. Your wideout room does not see many portal pieces, and that's enter. Again, a lot exits through the transfer portal. I believe, let me fact check real here. Top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Basically every receiver with over 100 yards last year, gone off of the team, except for one. That guy's name is Michael Buckley, redshirt senior. That's going to be coming back, providing some nice, good experience. But the other 2 starting pieces are going to be transfers. Isaiah Blair is a Cerritos College transfer, so a little JUCO community college guy there. But then Keegan Johnson, that's the big name to note here in this portal room. That's a phenomenal get out of the transfer portal. For a program of this stature, to get a guy like Keegan Johnson, he can be a bona fide star in the Mountain West. Now, again, he was not anything crazy special at Kansas State and at Iowa, his previous 2 stops. But last year with the Wildcats, 359 yards and 1 touchdown at the very least. That is some really good, solid production. And he's a guy with a lot of talent I think New Mexico is going to use pretty well. Tight end room, all of it pretty much going to be entering through the transfer portal. Every single piece. Dorian Thomas, he's over from Arizona. Cade Keith, he's over from TCU. Aiden Valdez from Campbell, and then Simon Mappa from the College of San Mateo. They do produce a lot of D1 talent. So this is again the New Mexico team that when I look at it, I still think it's got a lot of good, solid pieces. When you look at the offensive line, it does not see as much overhaul as the skill position room does, and it does have some pretty solid pieces. Again, the offensive line was fairly solid last year. I think the only allowing 5 sacks, which again, you got to give credit where credit is due. The offensive line definitely helped that number and gave Devin Dampier the time and ability to get outside of the pocket. But a lot of that was Devin Dampier's own ability, right? Escaping pressure, eluding sacks. How did he do that? He's a magician. You should have been sacked there stuff, right? So this is an offensive line I still think can see some improvement. But man, it really was a fairly impressive unit, all things considered last season. Could take a tiny step back this year, but I think as long as you got the strong offensive front. Now, look, there are some questions. What are the skill positions going to fit in, right? I think you got plenty of options in the running back room. If one guy doesn't work out, okay, you move on to the next, and you can just keep going down the depth chart that way. Again, Keegan Johnson, Isaiah Blair are the only wide receiver transfer, so it's a lot of younger guys, or I should say more inexperienced guys. You got some upperclassmen in here that are going to take the next step in their playing careers and get into some bigger roles this year, especially that of Michael Buckley, guy who caught 103 yards worth of production last year. And then Jack Lane as well, coming in at the quarterback position, already knows the system. Really curious to see how this offense all fits together. On the defensive side, Spence Nowinski is going to be your defensive coordinator. And the defense, Look, the defense, I'm not necessarily going to say held the team back last year, but if it was a little better at creating pressure, or if it was a little better at forcing turnovers, I think you probably could have seen New Mexico in a bowl game last year. I think the team did have that much talent on it, and they were playing really well at points throughout last season. So this defense needs to up the ante, and I'll give some statistical info to back this all up. 11 sacks last year. That's it. That's all they were able to produce. They did defend 42 passes, so good on the secondary there, but they only forced 3 interceptions and recovered only 7 fumbles. And albeit you can even sway it a little bit more when you say they only forced 5 fumbles. The stats do not look too bad overall for this team, but man, they really need to force more of those game-changing plays, get the aggressiveness factor upticked everywhere. And that starts on the defensive front. You've got to be able to pressure opposing quarterbacks in this conference where trench play really can mean a lot. Most pieces on the defensive front are going to depart. I'm talking about D-line and the linebacker room here. However, there are a ton of heavy hitters that are going to return to this team, while a lot of starting pieces and overall a lot of depth is going to leave. I mean, 41% returning production, guys. Overall, it's not a great number, but it's not a downright terrible number either. It's probably, again, on the lower end of you'd like to see a little bit more coming back. But guys, when I tell you these guys are heavy hitters, they were heavy hitters. Gabriel Lopez, he's going to be coming back to this defensive front. 31 tackles, 1 sack. He's going to return to this defensive line as an interior lineman. He's going to play defensive tackle with a lot of transfers coming in to surround him and some guys that, albeit are really experienced players, I should say, going to take steps up in their roles as far as the 2 deep goes. And you got 2 more guys in Randolph Kapai and Dimitri Johnson that are listed on the stat sheet I have in front of me as defensive linemen, but on the depth chart, they are linebackers, guys. They are going to be playing that linebacker position this year, and you look at what they did last year. Kapai, 80 tackles, 1 sack, 3 passes defended, was amazing. And then Johnson, 77 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 passes defended. He even picked off a pass in there as well. So you're looking at those 2 guys as, I think, really big pieces to this defense. And yes, the linebacker room has got some portal additions coming in, including a guy by the name of Jackson Eck, who obvious connection there to the head coach. Overall, the depth is going to be a little bit younger than some of the other position groupings you'll see on this team, but with those 2 guys leading the way, man, pretty darn good linebacking duo there for this New Mexico team. Now, the secondary is not so lucky. It really does not return that heavy hitting piece. Couple solid depth options coming back, sure, but most of this room is going to be built through the transfer portal. John Johnson, Clint Stevens, Austin Brawley, Abraham Williams, Albert Nunez, and so many other portal pieces are going to be entering this defensive backfield. It is a complete overhaul to a secondary that's got to see a step up, at the very least, in forcing interceptions this season. Your primary kicker is set to return from last season, but you are going to get a new punter entering the room in Charles Steinkamp. That's your special teams report, because, hey, kickers are people too, and it's always necessary and very much so warranted. They got a hard job to show them some love. So overall, you look at New Mexico, and I think it's pretty easy to say this team can take a step back. In fact, that's what I'm going to say. I think this team does take a step back. Of course, Bronco Mendenhall really worked to build that program, but hey, who knows? I do think this is a New Mexico team. Overall, when you look at it, with the foundation that Bronco Mendenhall set, there very much so could be a scenario where Jason Eck carries that momentum over, right? Let's look at their schedule. Well, Vegas is really not too high on this team. Before we talk about that, though, here you go. You can take a look at the 2025 football schedule for the New Mexico Lobos. Give you a second to look. And while you're looking at that, I want to tell you a little bit about the odds I have below me from the fine people at FanDuel. No, I'm not sponsored, and no, I'm not telling you to go gamble. You do what you want with your money. I'm nobody to ask about gambling. I am not an expert in it by any means, but the odds below me do provide some good context to see how good the odds makers think New Mexico is going to be this year. And overall, they expect them to really struggle. Guys, they have the longest odds by a long shot to win the Mountain West Conference. Nevada is second with plus 8,000 as of recording this video. By the way, these odds are always subject to change. 3.5 is that over-under win total, so there is a lot of expectation. for some struggles here in Albuquerque this year, and they're going to start right away this college football season when you have to go on the road and play Michigan. Michigan is just quite simply a team that is going to be exponentially more talented than New Mexico. I don't think I have to sit here and explain why. This is simply just a mismatch on paper. It's going to be a mismatch on the field. Michigan will thump New Mexico there in the Big House. But I do think New Mexico picks up their first win of the college football season against Idaho State. Bengals do lose some really good talent through the transfer portal, albeit they could still be a solid enough team in the FCS ranks. I don't think they're going to be anything super crazy. This is an Idaho State team overall that, again, can have some solid pieces, but I do see them dropping this game here to New Mexico, and the Lobos get their first win of 2025. UCLA is coming up next, and kind of like the Michigan game, although not to the extent that you're going to see against the Wolverines in Ann Arbor, but this is very much so a UCLA team that, well, I mean, you just take a look at them. I think it's a mismatch on paper, on the field. You have Nico Iamaleava that's going to play quarterback for you there now. I think that is a huge piece coming into that team. Obviously, he's got to make some improvements statistically from last season, but you can't deny the high upside in the talent level that he does possess. UCLA is a team that, yes, does lose a ton of good players offensively, defensively, but this could be a team that sees a nice building year under Deshaun Foster, really starts to grow. UCLA, not necessarily a team that I expect to be one of the big surprisers out of the Big Ten, but maybe they can do a little bit of damage. I at very least think they win this game, and you get a little bit of a shorter week for New Mexico, as well as going on the road to play in one of college football's most iconic stadiums. I do think UCLA will be able to win that game. Okay, so you move on here, and now you got a game against your rival in New Mexico State. This is a New Mexico State team that is expected to take that next step this season, be able to take a nice jump under Tony Sanchez. At least some people around Las Cruces are talking that way. Again, big rivalry matchup here, and New Mexico gets a week to think about it. They are off week 4. This game is taking place in week 5. Logan Fife is going to be a really good quarterback transferring in for New Mexico. I think he ups that quarterback play. Defensively, you get some really nice solid pieces coming back, including the linebacker Tyler Martinez, as well as some other portal pieces that are going to enter on both sides of the ball to really, I think, help give this New Mexico State team a better season than they had last year. But overall, I do take a look at this Aggie program, and I, again, am not totally sold on Tony Sanchez, not totally sold on some of the other talent that they have here. And again, I think New Mexico, especially early on in the season, can maintain some of that momentum they had last season. So I do have this as a win for the Lobos. I do think that Jason Eck is going to see a fair good amount of success early on this season, being able to implement his system. I think the guys are going to gel well. Here's the problem, though. The problem comes when you get into conference play, because your first 2 games in conference play, you have to go on the road against 2 teams that very well could be playing each other in the conference championship game. At San Jose State, I do think that's going to be a loss for you. Walker Iget, Floyd Chalk, really good wide receiver pieces, even though you do lose Nick Nash, enter through the transfer portal. You take a look at some of the defensive pieces there. San Jose State's got a lot of good position players on that side of the football, and it's a team that's going to be well coached by Ken Niumatalolo. San Jose State's one of those teams for me that I could see being a top contender in the conference, probably will be, and a team that's going to push for a bid in the conference championship. And Boise State, just still by far and away the best team in the Mountain West, the best team in the G5 ranks. Boise State did lose Ashton Genty, some good wide receiver pieces, defense. Of course, we all know how big of a piece Ashton Genty is, but look at what they got coming back. They got some good wide receiver pieces coming back. If Sire Gaines stays healthy, he's going to be a really good running back. The most important piece offensively is Maddox Madsen, that quarterback that helped that was a big part in leading them to that playoff appearance last season, including earning that first round bye. And Boise State has potentially, and I think they have it, they got one of the best secondaries in the entire Mountain West Conference, if not the entire G5 ranks. Boise State's still going to be a machine this year. I see that as a loss for New Mexico. However, I think you bounce back nicely and get this win against Nevada. Nevada's going to be a team that I think still is going to try to work and bulk up that talent level and find that identity under Jeff Choate. I think he'll eventually get this Nevada team churning a little bit, but overall, Nevada very well could just be a case this year where they really struggle and they could just be the team that does not do as well as expected. Even though they're not expected to do that well in the first place, they could definitely be that team that disappoints this year. I could very well see that. Nevada's a team that I'm going to sit towards the bottom of the Mountain West Conference, and that's going to be a win for the New Mexico Lobos. So you get your first conference win. I think a conference win is going to be really hard to come by up through the rest of the season. These last 4 games, going to be some really tough ones, but this one right here is by far and away, in my opinion, the most winnable game you have left on this schedule. Utah State is going to be a very interesting team to watch this upcoming season, especially this contest. Bronco Mendenhall is that head coach now. Well, okay, do you see a lot of fire and passion for Bronco Mendenhall to beat his former team he was just coaching last year? Or is this a New Mexico team with especially a lot of the returning players and those 3 key guys I mentioned defensively that are going to look across the sidelines, see their old head coach, have the home crowd backing them, and say, oh yeah, we got this one? Guys, I really could see this one deflecting in either direction. I decided to go with the road team here, though. I do think Utah State just a little bit more talented. I think they got a little bit more figured out, and albeit this is another team that is going to overhaul a ton of position groupings as well. They got a lot of new talent coming in. However, Bryson Barnes, I think, going to be a solid enough quarterback. Well, he doesn't blow me away. I think he'll at very least be pretty solid. Javen Jacobs is a good running back. They're overhauling their wide receiver room with some really good pieces. Defensively, I especially love what they brought in the defensive back room. Noah Avenger, Brevin Hamblin, Bobby Arnold, some really good pieces there. I think Utah State's going to have a bit more talent than New Mexico this year, and I think the winning bid is Bronco Mendenhall beating his former team. And like I told you, I think it's going to be really hard to come by a win for the remainder of the season. At UNLV, I think you're going to lose that one. Why? Well, kind of like the conversation with San Jose State and Boise State. It's just one of the best teams in the Mountain West on the road. But why are they one of the best? Well, even though they're going to be overhauling everything, like some other teams that I've talked about on this schedule so far, UNLV is still an extremely talented team. They brought in a lot of good transfer portal pieces, and their head coach to replace Barry Odom, who left to go to West Lafayette and coach the Purdue Boilermakers, is Dan Mullen. Guys, I know the way that he left Florida was not great, but he was a really good head coach at the SEC level. UNLV is still a team that I can sit here and say, yeah, this is absolutely a team that I can see making a run to the conference championship game. And I think you can still look across, and San Jose State falls into this conversation. Maybe some other teams do as well. UNLV, in my opinion, is still the top team to contend with Boise State in winning this conference. That is a loss for the New Mexico Lobos. Again, tough to find a win even after that bye week. Colorado State does lose Torrey Horton and some other really important pieces to the team last year. However, this very much so is a Rams team that's going to, return some really good pieces. Braden Fowler-Nicolosi's coming back at quarterback. And B, I think Jay Norvell is going to be a pretty solid head coach. Colorado State's going to continue to move in the right direction, and I think they can be a little bit of a sneaky bid to make some noise in the Mountain West and even try to break their way into that conference championship game. So that's a loss for New Mexico. You're also going to lose this game to Air Force. No way the Falcons have as poor of a season this year as they had last year. In 2023 to 2024, they were having to replace pretty much everybody. Now, from last year into this coming season, you do have some really solid pieces that are going to be returning here. A lot of good returning starters. And knowing the way Troy Calhoun coaches, yeah, guys, this just simply is not a team that's going to be down 2 years in a row. I refuse to believe it. Air Force is going to beat New Mexico. And I think San Diego State wins this game as well. It did not work out fully under Sean Lewis last year, but I think they can take that next step this season. Now, is there a lot to improve? Yeah, but kind of like this one here against Utah State. Again, a team that can do a little bit better than some people are expecting them to do. I think San Diego State got some really good pieces in the transfer portal, and I do think that things are going to start to go Sean Lewis's way a little bit more than they did last year. Are they going to be fantastic? No, probably not, but they'll be better than they were last year, and that's a win in enemy territory. So overall, New Mexico finishes 3-9. That is the under on the over-under win total. Again, it is a little bit of a tricky schedule. However, I think you can beat Utah State and go 4-8. Finding some other 2 wins here, at least to me, is going to have to take some convincing. Okay, you come up with an argument. I think you can beat San Diego State. Okay, maybe there's a world in where Air Force is down again. But overall, this is a team that not necessarily is going to start over. I don't think Jason Eck is going to have to build this team all the way back up, but he does have to implement his system, get his guys in here. I think it's going to be another building process. It will not be as slow and painful as what Bronco Mendenhall had to do, and that worked out greatly. I do think New Mexico is a team that can keep building off this momentum, but for the first year of Jason Eck, does not go according to the full plan. They go 3-9 in 2025. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and remember to play hard but tailgate harder. I will see all of you guys in the next video. Goodbye.